I'd like to present our next speaker, Jorge Gamboa. He is the founder of, excuse me if I've mispronounced that, Jorge, Magellan.
Mm-mm.
And,
That's
Magellan
right.
is making remote meetings more effective, a B2B productivity tool. So Jorge, he will be speaking over growing ARR from 0 to 1 million. And I'd like to pass the mic over to you, Jorge. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Javi. And then you pronounce it perfectly. Most people call me George, and it's Jorge. So thank you.
It's funny. I have the same
Yeah. So
issue. People call me Javier, Javier, so you were one of the few people that actually got it right in Javi.
nice. Yeah, I think I recognize the pain. So I took a shot. Awesome. And so for my discussion, like I'm gonna have much more of a discussion. Like if people have questions and they want to put them in the chat, I'm happy to respond because I'm going to be talking about my experiences, growing revenue from $0 to 1.1 ARR. But what I'm trying to do is convey general frameworks, but ultimately people are going to have specific questions about them and their issues, and I want to help out as much as possible. So if people want to put a question in the chat, like I want to make this more interactive, more of a dialogue. And given that we have about 22 minutes, I don't want to save it for the very end. So just want to put that out there.
Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely I'll keep an eye out on the chat if you kind of just want to start speaking, and then you should have access to the chat as well. But maybe I'll stop you if the question comes in or not, just to be efficient.
Yeah,
if that works for you.
please do. Yeah. So yeah, that sounds great. So I'll keep my eye on the chat, but please feel free to jump in if I miss something or I'm ignoring it. So for this conversation, I really want to focus on like 4 major lessons learned, and I'm coming at growth from a sales perspective. So I'm a salesperson. I manage a sales team of 6, and I was the first sales hire at Doorkee, where we ended up raising $7 million in funding, and now we're set to be acquired over the next month or two. So for a first-time founder and a first-time founding team, that's a success that everyone on the team is really, really proud of. And so the major learnings were, how do you build a sales process from scratch? Because I had never worked in the industry and neither had the CEO. How do you balance the need to grow as quickly as possible while protecting your runway? And also, how do you dream big, but at the same time do so in moderation so that you aren't crushed by your dreams? And how do you get to that, like cross that mythical threshold of a million ARR, which seems to be that what you need to do to get to the Series A or to get an acquisition? So right now, the market's saying between 1 million to 3 million ARR is that sweet spot of getting that Series A funding, which is where a lot of startups fall short. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And starting the sales process from scratch, I think this is an area where I had no experience before because I'd always joined large companies where we knew every stage of the process. We knew what the discovery questions were. We had our marketing collateral. Like there was a system in place, and I would just jump in and learn as much as possible, modify it to my style, and run with it. Whereas at Doorkee, we had one client, and we had 260. We were a residential leasing platform for New York City landlords. And so we had to figure everything out. And so obviously the goal of every sales process is to get from 0 to 1 as quickly as possible, but you have to be responsive to the market and your client's needs. And what do I mean by that? Well, we would meet with landlords, and right, these are the CEOs of the companies. They own all the properties, and they said, yes, we want to use Dorky. And you need to talk to Joey in leasing to get my units on the platform. So at this point, we're like, all right, we've closed the deal, and now we have a client. And we would get to this meeting with Joey and we'd say, hey, Joey, we need A, B, C, and D from you to get you onto our platform. And then nothing would happen. And so we'd inevitably like go back to the CEO and say, hey, Joey's not giving us access like you needed. And he would make the request again. And we're like, okay, like now Joey's definitely going to comply, and nothing would happen again. And we were really baffled by this because, whenever a boss tells me to do something, I do it, right? Like my job's on the line, like my reputation. But for some reason in this industry, which is real estate, it was like okay to ignore a direct command from the CEO when it came to this area of leasing. So we had to like adjust to the market where it's okay, getting a yes from the CEO isn't the end of the sale, it's the beginning of the process. And we need to sell the leasing staff. And when we adjusted to that new reality, suddenly the deal started progressing further. So sell to the CEO, he sends you to the leasing staff, you need to sell the leasing staff again, and we're able to actually close the deal and move forward. And so when building something from scratch, your goal should be to have a vision of what the close looks like and do so as quickly as possible, but have the flexibility and the willingness to adjust to what the market's doing. And the market's going to tell you whether you're succeeding or not in as little as like 3 to 4 reps. So that's one of the major lessons learned is that to be flexible and responsive to the market, while at the same time always pushing to have as short a sales process as possible. Um, Another thing that I wish I'd understood sooner is the need to document everything. Because if you document your sales process from here are the discovery notes that we have, which that I do fairly well, but here are the different stages. Here are the major lessons I've learned. Here are the major value props that we have. And here are the sales scripts. It's going to make the transition when you hire a team so much faster, right? Um, when the CEO hired me, he didn't have any of this, so I had to build it from scratch. And I think it would have been beneficial for us as a company to have that documented so that when he handed over the sales process to me, I would have been able to get more up to speed quicker, and then run with it even faster and build on it. Because it's always easier to build something when you're looking at something that already exists, right? Starting with a blank page is always it can be a little bit scary for some people. So my lesson learned is you want to document everything as much as possible so that when you hand over the reins of your sales process to your first sales hire, they can iterate on that process and make it improve on it. And then when they start hiring new salespeople, they're going to be able to ramp even quicker. So when you're starting from scratch, you want to have a vision of what good looks like, but you want to be adaptable to the market and you want to document everything. So I'm going to go into balancing speed versus protecting runway, but I also want to give everyone just like a brief pause to ask any questions or any thoughts about what it takes to go from 0 to 1 on the sales process. Cool. All right. So that's like what it takes to build your sales process. Now, balancing speed versus protecting your runway. Now, I think Carol had a really interesting point that there's a lot of free tools out there that applies for sales as well. You know, HubSpot CRM is totally free. Their sales automation tool is pretty affordable, but I've actually sort of come to the other conclusion. And everyone's circumstance is different, but I for my first year at Doorkee was fiendish about protecting runway, which means that I used the free CRM at HubSpot and I used their sales automation tool, which was $50 a month. And I used that for about a year and we were closing clients. We had a repeatable sales process. And when it came time to start hiring team members, that's when I realized I want to hire them and use the best in class solutions. So I had to transition from HubSpot to Salesforce. Um, and then from HubSpot sales automation tool to Outreach or Sales Ops, which I can't recommend enough. They are by far the best in the market. They cost about $100 per month. And in that transition, um, it just took up a lot of time, energy, and effort to transition from those solutions to the others. And so now, in my own company, I'm restarting this process all over again. And I came to the conclusion that if you or someone on your team is going to spend a substantial portion of time on sales, my recommendation, obviously, it depends on your budget and your needs and how much time you're going to spend on sales. But my recommendation is if you're spending a substantial part of your time on sales, to just start with the best in class solutions, go with Salesforce, go with an Outreach or Sales Loft, and spend an extra $1,500 to $2,000 a year. That's what the tools are going to cost you. However, the value you're going to get from not having to then switch over to them in a year or two or however long it's going to take, which you're going to have to do at some point as you hire more people, and then the opportunity cost of not using those best in class solutions from the get-go far outweighs the extra money. Now, the particulars depends on, do you have the $2,000 to spend, right? Obviously, it depends on your budget and your needs, but my suggestion is to go best in class from the beginning, because then when you hire people, you don't have to transition and you don't have to get everything set up. So for sales automations, you're going to have your email templates already saved so that your reps can look at them and duplicate them. You're already going to have like all of the data stored so that they can review it and analyze it and say, okay, here's like the value props that resonated most. Here are the email subject lines that got the most opens. Here are the call to actions that got the most replies, versus having to manage the pain of losing that data, which we did, and is inevitable as you transition from one system to the other, because it's hard to transfer all your data. At some point, you're going to accidentally erase something, and that would be my suggestion: is really spend the money for best in class solutions earlier rather than later. And then on the sales side, I think there's a question that I got a lot, which is, do you want to use an outsourced SDR service to get more meetings? And I actually never did until the very end of my 3 years at Doorkee. And when we did, I realized I should have done it sooner. So a typical outsourced SDR solution is going to cost anywhere from like $3,000 to $5,000 a month, depending on who you buy and what results you want to get. And my advice to founders is that an outsourced SDR service absolutely accelerates growth. So you want to use it in two instances. One, when you're ready to accelerate growth. So is your product delivering value that it promises it's going to deliver? And when you get a client on board, are they sticking around, beyond 3 to 4 months? So if your product's delivering value and if your clients are sticking around, and then the third option is, and what messaging resonates, what subject lines gets opened, how to get first meetings. If you have those learnings, then it's absolutely worth it, assuming you have the budget, to use an outsourced SDR to accelerate your growth. Because at the end of the day, they are going to help you get more clients quicker. And that's what investors want to see. And that's what they're paying for, so that they can say, all right, if I give Dorky or if I give Jorge more money, they're going to get that hockey stick growth. So while outsourced SDR services are way more expensive and it's a much trickier decision to make, if you have a product that's good, if your clients stick around, and if you know your value props to get meetings, you should absolutely consider it, especially that crucial like 6 months before you fundraise, so they can see that up trajectory up and to the right, and make things better. Cool. So that's sort of where I fall in terms of speed of growth by best in class solutions and outsourcing help and protecting runway. Again, we have 10 minutes left here. I want to give a brief pause for any questions, and then I'll kind of continue to how to manage expectations so that they don't crush you. Okay, cool. Great. Now the other pitfall is you're starting your company, you're building your team, you guys are dreaming big, right? No one quits their cushy job making a healthy 6-figure salary to be an early employee or to start a company if they don't think that they can turn this in to something that's huge, something that could be millions or billions of dollars. But I think there is a caveat, which is you want to dream big in moderation. And what do I mean? I think there's a book out there that I love by Grant Cardone called The 10X Rule. And if you haven't read it, you should read it. It's exceptional. But there's basically 3 premises to this book. One is that you play to the level of your dreams, right? So big dreams inspire big action, which I absolutely agree. The second premise is that it's going to take you way more time, energy, and effort than you realize to achieve your goal. Therefore, whatever your goal is, you need to 10x it. And the third premise is that whatever goal you set, you're going to fall short, right? So, like his general rule is we fall about 80 to 90% short of our goals. which again is why you need to 10x them. Because if you 10x them and you fall short, you're going to be well above where you would have been had you not 10x your goals. So that's the premise of the book. You should read it. Grant does an incredible job. It's super motivating, very informative. And my CEO and I aligned on this vision. But I think there can be negative consequences to 10xing it. So our version of 10xing the goal was within our first year. Remember, we had one client, we had 264 units. We set the goal to within a year and a half having 100,000 units, which would have been 10% of the New York residential market within 1 year. Now, my CEO and I knew this was an impossible goal or a nearly impossible goal. But our goal was to push ourselves to perform at the highest possible level. But what it did was it pushed me to focus my efforts on landlords that could, give us 10,000, 15,000 units, which I did. I was able to close 5 of the top 20 residential landlords in New York City. So in that way, the goal absolutely helped. But in the beginning, because the goal was so big, it made me neglect the smaller deals, which for our business model was super important. So landlords with 200 units, 300 units that were more likely to close faster, I was sort of pushing them by the wayside. And it wasn't until I had a conversation with the co-founder who asked me, how's sales going, Jorge? I was like, great, I've got this big deal, this big deal, this big deal. But I got a couple landlords interested. They only had 200 units. I'm just like not going to bother with them. And it was in that conversation, he said, Jorge, you absolutely need to pay attention to them. Let's bring them on board and let's revisit this goal. And after that conversation, we sort of readjusted the 100,000 unit goal, understanding that it's leading to negative consequences. And so my suggestion is to sort of modify the Grant Cardone's 10x rule a little bit to double and triple your goal. So I would say set the goal of what do I need to achieve to comfortably get to the next level of funding. So if I know that I need at least $1 million in ARR to get a Series A, well, I want to then hit 2 to 3 million, and you set whatever goal is aggressive. And then you talk to your sales leader or whoever you hire and say, look, this is our goal, right? It's going to be 2 million, right? Or let's say you want to say, all right, let's go back. I know I need $1 million of ARR to get a Series A. I'm going to triple that goal to make sure that it's very comfortable. So 3 million ARR. You tell your sales leader, look, our goal is 3 million. And to get to this goal, you are going to need to double it some more. So you should aim for 6 million ARR. And so now we're at about like 6x the original goal. And again, this is to create enough gap between what you actually want to achieve and what you're setting your targets as to make sure that you clear this hurdle easily. But you do not want it to be so great that it actually crushes you and brings everything down. And that was one thing that by the end at Doorkee, we actually managed well, but it took us 2.5 years of major pain to get there. And I would say, don't wait, get there a lot sooner. Okay, now we have 5 more minutes. And I want to give a pause right there if anyone has any questions about setting aggressive targets and dreaming big, but dreaming in moderation. Okay, cool. Now getting to $1 million in ARR, right? This is a super cool part. This is what everyone's dreaming about. To do so, you have to have a repeatable sales process. That means that when I get a lead or an introductory meeting, I can call my shots. I can say, like, there's an 80% chance this deal is going to close. There's a 20% chance this deal is going to close, and bring people from the beginning of the sales pipeline all the way to the end repeatedly. You need to have your stages of your sales and your marketing collateral ready, as well as being able to deliver on your process. Once you have the ability to predict which deals will close or not, that's when you need to start hiring your team. Because without the ability to predict which deals will close and with a certain level of confidence, you have to really ask yourself, what am I and what is my sales leader going to teach the rest of the sales team? Right? If you're still trying to figure out your sales process, which by the way, this is a process that never ends. You're going to be constantly iterating, constantly improving, and that should be from beginning all the way to the end of the company. But if you can't, with a level of certainty, say, I'm going to close that deal. This deal's because of X, Y, Z reason, or this deal's a bad deal because of X, Y, Z, then you do not have a repeatable sales process, and it's too soon to begin ramping up your sales team. But once you do have a repeatable sales process, you have everything documented. The goal is to hire people in twos. And it's crucial to hire people in twos for multiple reasons. One is it creates a level of healthy competition. Two is they're going to be measuring themselves. This is related to the competition point, but they're going to be constantly measuring themselves against each other and pushing each other to perform at higher and higher levels. And the second thing is they also now have someone to turn to for help and advice, because it can be overwhelming or intimidating to go to your boss or to go to the CEO of a company and say, hey, um, I need help on this, or I need to help learn this. You want to create a culture where it's absolutely acceptable to do so, but there's just certain levels of silly questions where it's much easier to ask a peer than to ask a boss. So not only does it lead to healthy competition, but it accelerates the reps ramp time, and it creates a level of accountability where they can't just coast and be the top rep. So that would be my advice to everyone, is to hire in twos at a minimum. Obviously, if you want to hire in three or four, even better. But at a minimum, try to hire in two. And if you can't, wait. And then try to create a sales culture that's competitive, but it's friendly competition. So you're not trying to destroy them. You're not trying to win at all costs. We're trying to make everyone better. And yeah, that's sort of the approach I would take. And if you do that, you can get there. So by the end, we had 6 reps at Doorkee, and I hired 1 rep. That's where I learned you want to hire 2 reps. Although she actually ended up being uh, my. All right, Jacob's question is, tell me a life hack of how to minimize the risk of business failure. And I will try to answer that in 60 seconds. Um, I mean, my success in sales has been a willingness to do whatever it takes, whether I like it or not. So that means putting in the hours, putting in the work, and then being willing to slow down to speed up. That's actually something I tell my reps all the time. In sales is a numbers game and it's a bit art and science, but if you don't take a moment to step back and analyze, how can I make my process more efficient? How can I improve it? Then you're never going to improve. You're just going to be running as fast as you can at your same terminal velocity, right? So you need to, it's counterintuitive, but you need to, on a weekly, monthly basis, analyze what can I do better, and constantly be willing to experiment. And I would say those two things, willingness to do whatever it takes, willingness to experiment, and willingness to take a step back and analyze things to say, how can I improve? And then doing the things I say, have been what have led to my greatest successes. So, Jacob, I hope that helps answer your question a little bit. Now I have to hop, and I'm sorry to do this to you guys. I'm going to put my email in the chat here so that anyone can email me or reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to help out. And Javi, how do I actually do this? Don't know how to actually type in this chat. So if you could just drop
I
my
will do
email in,
that
that would
for
be
you.
great.
I know you have to run, but Jorge, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Very insightful. Yeah, connect with Jorge on LinkedIn. Are you on Twitter?
I am on Twitter. I'm not as active, but you can find me at Jorge. It's JA Gamboa 7 on Twitter.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks again, Jorge. Have a great day.